He accused her of cheating and left her pregnant with quintuplets. But when she presented DNA results at his wedding altar proving all 5 children were his, even the priest gasped. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel and let's get started. Catherine Wilson's hands trembled as she arranged the sterling silver cutlery on Richard Bennett's mahogany dining table. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows of his Michigan Avenue penthouse, Chicago's autumn rain pelted against the glass, creating a symphonic backdrop to what she hoped would be the most significant evening of their 4-year relationship. She paused, one hand resting instinctively on her barely visible baby bump, hidden beneath the flowing fabric of her emerald dress. 4 months pregnant. The reality still sent shivers of both terror and joy through her body. "They'll love you just as much as I do," she whispered, addressing the life growing inside her. "Richard will be shocked at first, but he'll come around. He has to." Kate had meticulously planned every detail of this evening. The Chilean sea bass, Richard's favorite, was marinating. The vintage Bordeaux he'd brought back from his last European business trip was breathing on the counter. She'd even scattered rose petals from the entry to the dining room, a touch of romance that felt simultaneously cliched and necessary. A Harvard scholarship girl from Boston's struggling suburbs dating the heir to the Bennett Industries fortune had raised eyebrows from the start. Their worlds couldn't have been more different. Her childhood in a cramped apartment with second-hand furniture versus his in a lakeside mansion with household staff. Yet over 4 years, they'd built something that felt real, beyond the superficial differences of background and wealth. Now, everything would change. She rehearsed the words again in her mind. "Richard, we're going to have a baby." No, too abrupt. "Richard, remember how we talked about having a family someday? Well, someday is coming sooner than we planned." Still not right. The electronic lock beeped, announcing his arrival. Kate straightened her dress, pushed a strand of chestnut hair behind her ear, and took a steadying breath. "Kate?" Richard's voice echoed through the apartment. "What's all this?" He appeared in the doorway, tall and commanding in his tailored navy suit, his blue eyes, the same ones she'd fallen for at that Harvard alumni event, taking in the romantic scene with visible confusion. "Welcome home," she said, moving to kiss him. "I thought we deserved a special night." Richard accepted her kiss distantly, loosening his Hermes tie. "Any particular reason? Did the foundation approve your grant proposal?" "No, it's more personal than that." Kate guided him to the table, heart pounding. "Sit, please, I'll pour the wine." She reached for the Bordeaux, then hesitated, pouring sparkling water for herself instead. Richard noticed immediately. "You're not drinking?" His eyes narrowed. "You always have wine with dinner." This wasn't how she'd planned to start the conversation, but Kate recognized the opening. She set down the water bottle and took his hands in hers. "Richard, I have news." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I'm pregnant, 4 months along." The silence that followed seemed to stretch for an eternity. She watched his face, waiting for joy, shock, even concern, any of the reactions she'd anticipated. What she hadn't prepared for was the cold fury that gradually transformed his handsome features. 4 months, he repeated, his voice unnervingly calm. "And you're telling me now?" "I wanted to be sure everything was healthy before—" "Healthy?" Richard yanked his hands away from hers. "You really expect me to believe this is my child?" The words hit her like a physical blow. "What are you talking about? Of course it's yours. Who else's would it be?" Richard stood abruptly, the chair scraping against hardwood. "You disappear for that conference in Boston 2 weekends a month. 4 months ago, what was it? Your mother was sick. Your friend needed help moving." "My grandmother's birthday," Kate whispered, disbelief washing over her. "You know I visit my family regularly. You've never had a problem with it before." A Harvard scholarship girl from the Boston slums thinks she can trap a Bennett with the oldest trick in the book. His laugh was harsh, unfamiliar. Do you know how many women have tried this exact play on my father? On me? Kate stood shakily. Richard, this isn't a trick. We've been together for 4 years. I love you. This baby is yours. Ours. Prove it. He towered over her. Prove this isn't some calculated move to secure yourself a piece of the Bennett fortune. You want a paternity test? Fine. We can do that after the baby is born. But Richard, it's yours. I've never been with anyone else since we met. Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. Get out. What? You heard me. Get out. Each word was enunciated with precision. Richard, please, you're not thinking clearly. Let's talk about this tomorrow when… He moved with unexpected speed, grabbing her purse from the counter and marching toward the bedroom. Kate followed, confusion giving way to panic as he yanked open her dresser drawers and began throwing her clothes haphazardly into the center of the room. What are you doing? Stop it! She tried to grab his arm, but he shook her off. You have 5 minutes to pack what you can carry. The rest goes out the window. You can't be serious! Richard, it's pouring rain! He continued his systematic destruction of their shared space, emptying her jewelry box onto the floor, tossing her books across the room. 4 years, Kate. 4 years I let you into my world, introduced you to my colleagues, my family, and all along you were planning this. Planning what? A pregnancy? Richard, this wasn't planned, but that doesn't make it unwanted. He paused, a handful of her silk blouses clutched in his fist. You really thought I'd believe these babies are mine? That I'd marry you and make you a Bennett? Kate froze. Babies? What do you mean, babies? Richard's smile was cruel. Don't play dumb. My assistant overheard your doctor's appointment confirmation. Multiple heartbeats, Kate. Twins? Triplets? Whatever you've engineered, it's not with me. Before she could process this new information, multiple babies? Richard had moved to the window, throwing it open against the driving rain. With theatrical flair, he began tossing her clothes into the night air, designer pieces she'd saved for months to purchase fluttering down 16 stories to the street below. Richard, stop, please! Kate lunged for him, but he held her back with one arm, continuing to discard her possessions with the other. Neighbors in the building across the street appeared at their windows, watching the spectacle unfold. Kate's humiliation burned hotter than her panic. I trusted you, she whispered, and I trusted you. Richard's voice dropped to a venomous hiss. A mistake I won't make again. Wall Street isn't a place for Boston trailer trash like you. Go back to where you belong. The slap echoed in the room before Kate realized she'd raised her hand. Richard's cheek reddened, his eyes widening in shock before narrowing with renewed fury. You have 60 seconds to get out before I call security and have you removed for assault. Kate grabbed what she could, her laptop, phone, wallet, stumbling through the apartment as tears blurred her vision. At the door, she turned back one last time. Richard, please, I'm carrying your children. Don't do this. His response was to pick up a framed photo of them in Martha's Vineyard and smash it against the wall. Not mine. Never mine. Now get out! The door slammed behind her with such force that a neighboring apartment's door opened, an elderly woman peering out with concern. Miss, are you all right? Kate couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. She managed to shake her head before stumbling toward the elevator, the reality of her situation crashing down with each step. Homeless, humiliated, pregnant with multiple babies, and completely alone. The elevator doors opened and she stepped inside, catching her reflection in the mirrored wall. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. Her carefully styled hair hung in damp tendrils. The emerald dress, bought specially for this night, was wrinkled and spotted with tears. Outside, the doorman who had greeted her cheerfully for 4 years now looked through her as if she were invisible. The rain soaked her instantly as she stepped onto Michigan Avenue, still clutching her meager possessions. A small crowd had gathered around the scattered clothes on the sidewalk. A woman was holding up one of Kate's silk blouses, examining the label before glancing up at the Bennett penthouse. Kate turned away, unable to bear the final indignity of watching strangers pick through the remains of her former life. 3 days later, Kate sat numbly in a sterile examination room at New York Presbyterian Hospital, staring at the ultrasound monitor without truly seeing it. "Ms. Wilson, are you listening?" The doctor's voice broke through her fog. "I'm sorry. What did you say?" The doctor pointed to the screen. "As I was explaining, we're not looking at twins or triplets. Based on this ultrasound, you're carrying quintuplets. 5 babies." "5?" Kate whispered, the room spinning around her. "It's extremely rare without fertility treatments, a 1 in several million occurrence." The doctor studied her face. "Were you taking any fertility medications?" "No, nothing." Kate's mind raced. 5 babies. How could she possibly manage? The doctor continued discussing high-risk pregnancy management, but Kate barely heard him. The weight of her new reality pressed down like a physical force, single, soon to be unemployed, and pregnant with quintuplets. As she exited the consultation room, a familiar voice froze her in place. "A quintuplet pregnancy? That's your play?" Richard Bennett stood in the corridor, immaculate in a charcoal suit, looking at her with undisguised contempt. "Even mathematically, that makes no sense. You must have slept with half of Manhattan to achieve that genetic feat." Kate clutched her medical file tighter. "What are you doing here? How did you find me?" "When you're a Bennett, information is easy to obtain." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I came to make something very clear. These children, however many there are not my responsibility. Contest this, and I'll destroy what's left of your reputation." "They're yours, Richard. You know they are." His smile never reached his eyes. "Prove it." "Oh wait, you can't until they're born. And by then, you'll be desperate enough to take whatever settlement my lawyers offer to disappear permanently." A nurse approached, concern evident on her face. "Ms. Wilson, is everything all right?" Richard stepped back immediately, his public face sliding seamlessly into place. "Just wishing an old friend well," he said smoothly before turning on his heel and walking away. The nurse touched Kate's arm gently. "You're pale as a ghost. Let's get you sitting down." As Kate followed the nurse to a chair, her phone buzzed with an email notification from her firm. "Mandatory meeting with HR 9 a.m. tomorrow." She knew without a doubt what it meant. The Bennett influence had begun its systematic dismantling of her life. That night in her Manhattan apartment, the one she could no longer afford, Kate sat on the bathroom floor, surrounded by pregnancy pamphlets and tears. 5 babies, no job, no health insurance, no future in New York. She pulled herself up to look in the mirror, barely recognizing the exhausted woman staring back. Then, slowly, she placed both hands on her still small belly. "It doesn't matter what he said," she whispered fiercely. "You are my strength now. We're going to survive this, all 6 of us." What Kate couldn't know that cold night was that 15 years later, she would command a billion-dollar empire and watch terror fill Richard Bennett's eyes when he finally discovered that the quintuplets he rejected would become his greatest regret. Kate stared at her reflection in the grimy bathroom mirror of her Bronx apartment, the words she had whispered still hanging in the cold air. The 5 tiny lives growing inside her were indeed her strength now. They had to be. She splashed water on her face, wincing as the pipes groaned and the water ran brown for several seconds before clearing. The apartment was a far cry from Richard's Michigan Avenue penthouse. At 400 square feet, with peeling wallpaper and a temperamental radiator that clanked more than it heated, it was all she could afford after being systematically locked out of Manhattan's rental market. 3 different property managers had given her the same apologetic look. "Sorry, Ms. Wilson, but we've received concerning information about your financial stability." The Bennett influence was far-reaching indeed. Kate's alarm blared at 4:30 the next morning. Outside, New York was experiencing its coldest winter in decades, with temperatures regularly dropping below 0. She layered clothing strategically, a loose sweater over a button-down shirt that could still accommodate her growing belly, now visible at 5 months pregnant with quintuplets. "One day at a time," she murmured, wrapping a threadbare scarf around her neck before stepping out into the pre-dawn darkness. The subway at that hour was a collection of night shift workers heading home and early risers like herself. Kate leaned against a pole, conserving energy for the day ahead. Her first job started at 5:30, the morning shift at Brewer's, a busy cafe in Midtown that catered to Wall Street types rushing to early meetings. By 5:15, Kate was tying her apron behind the counter, carefully positioning it to minimize the visibility of her pregnancy. Marissa, the manager, watched with narrowed eyes. "Catherine, that uniform's getting tight. We have standards here." Kate nodded, tugging the fabric. "I'll bring a larger size tomorrow." "See that you do." Marissa hesitated. "And maybe work the register today instead of floor service. Some customers have mentioned your condition." The first rush began at 6, a blur of expensive suits and distracted faces, ordering complicated coffee preparations while never looking up from their phones. Kate maintained a pleasant smile through the nausea that still plagued her, through the shooting pains in her feet, through the exhaustion that seemed bone-deep now. At 8:30, she recognized a familiar face, Jonathan Park, who had been a junior analyst at her former firm. He did a double take. "Kate? Kate Wilson?" She straightened, maintaining her dignity. "Good morning, Jonathan. The usual macchiato?" His eyes flickered to her midsection, then back to her face. "I heard rumors, but—" He lowered his voice. "Are you okay? Everyone was told you resigned for personal reasons." "Is that what they said?" Kate's smile never wavered. "How interesting." Jonathan shifted uncomfortably. "Listen, if you need anything, your macchiato is ready." She pushed the cup forward. "That'll be $5.75. He placed a 20 on the counter. "Keep the change, and Kate—" He hesitated. "Bennett's a bastard. Everyone knows it." She watched him leave, the unexpected kindness making her throat tighten. The change he'd left would buy dinner tonight. At 11, Kate slipped out the back door, changing her shirt in the alley before hurrying to the subway. Her second job began at noon, administrative assistant at Brookfield Properties, a small real estate office in Midtown East. The position paid less than she'd once spent on lunch, but it was indoors, seated, and the owner either didn't notice or didn't comment on her growing belly. "Kate, can you finish inputting these listings before you leave today?" Mr. Abrams dropped a stack of papers on her desk. "And the Rogers file needs to be reorganized. They've changed their requirements again." "Of course." Kate was already logging into the outdated computer system, ignoring the cramping sensation that had started during her subway ride. Braxton Hicks contractions, the pregnancy websites called them. False labor. Nothing to worry about unless they became regular. By 6 in the evening, the cramping had intensified. Kate discreetly massaged her lower back, finishing the last of the data entry before gathering her things. "Working late again?" The cleaning lady, Mrs. Fuentes, paused in the doorway with her cart. "Not good for the babies, miss." Kate managed a tired smile. "Just finished. Good night, Mrs. Fuentes." "You eat something warm tonight, yes? Too skinny for 5 babies." The subway ride home was standing room only, the car overheated and stuffy. Kate closed her eyes, swaying with the motion, one hand protectively covering her belly. A businessman accidentally bumped into her as the train lurched. "Sorry," he muttered, then did a double take. "Hey, aren't you Catherine Wilson, from Turner and Hayes?" Kate stiffened. "I think you're mistaking me for someone else." "No, I'm sure of it. You did that presentation on emerging markets last year. Brilliant stuff." His eyes drifted to her midsection, understanding dawning. "Oh, I see." She got off at the next stop, even though it wasn't hers, waiting for the following train in the freezing platform rather than endure more recognition. By 8 that evening, Kate was at her kitchen table, really just a folding card table salvaged from the curb, hunched over her laptop. Her third job was the least consistent but potentially the most lucrative: freelance legal document review. Her Harvard law background qualified her to comb through complex contracts for errors and inconsistencies, work she could do during the quiet hours when sleep eluded her. $3.50 per document, she murmured, calculating as her stomach growled. 2 more tonight means grocery money for the week. She opened her nearly empty refrigerator, assessing its contents with mathematical precision. 1 egg, half a loaf of bread, a jar of peanut butter, some wilting spinach. $1 for me, 5 for you, she told her belly, making a sandwich with precisely 1/3 of the remaining peanut butter. The doctor had been emphatic about proper nutrition for a quintuplet pregnancy, recommending a diet rich in protein, calcium, and fresh produce. Kate had nodded as if such things were within reach rather than luxury items in her new economic reality. After eating, she returned to the legal documents, working until her vision blurred around midnight. Only then did she allow herself to focus on what she'd been thinking about all day: the corner of the studio she'd designated as the nursery. It wasn't much. A collection of cardboard boxes lined with blankets donated by a church in Harlem. 5 tiny hats knitted by Mrs. Martinez from apartment 3B, who had clucked her tongue at Kate's situation and declared, "My mother had 9 children in a village with no doctor. You will manage." Kate sat cross-legged on the floor, arranging and rearranging the meager baby supplies she'd gathered. 5 onesies from a thrift store, 7 receiving blankets, faded but clean, a package of newborn diapers purchased 1 small pack at a time over weeks. "It's not much," she told her unborn children, "but we'll make it work." From a discarded magazine, she carefully cut out pictures of sunshine, trees, stars, anything colorful and cheerful, and taped them to the wall above the makeshift cribs. Her own version of the hand-painted mural that would have adorned the nursery in Richard's penthouse. "You'll never have to earn love," she promised, taping a yellow paper sun above 1 box. "You'll never have to prove your worth." The next morning began the same grueling cycle. By the second week of this routine, Kate's body was showing the strain. Her ankles swelled dramatically by mid-afternoon. Dark circles permanently resided under her eyes. The cafe manager had moved her permanently to the back, away from customer view. "Catherine, you're scaring the morning bankers," Marissa had said bluntly. "And that uniform, even the largest size, looks inappropriate now." During her brief lunch break, Kate huddled in the public library, using their free Wi-Fi to research quintuplet pregnancies and affordable housing options outside New York. Seattle kept appearing in her searches: lower cost of living than Manhattan, decent public schools, growing tech industry with potential administrative jobs. 5 more months of saving, she calculated. Then we leave before you arrive. She bookmarked apartment listings in Seattle's more affordable neighborhoods, ignoring the voice in her head that questioned how she'd manage a cross-country move while heavily pregnant. One evening, reaching for a can of discounted soup on a high supermarket shelf, Kate felt the room spin suddenly. She gripped the shelf for support, but darkness edged her vision. When she regained awareness, she was sitting on the floor, a concerned store employee kneeling beside her. "Ma'am? Should I call an ambulance?" "No," Kate said quickly, thinking of the cost. "No, I'm fine. Just stood up too fast." "You sure? Because you've been out for a good minute there." Kate accepted his help standing, embarrassment burning her cheeks. "Thank you. I'm fine, really." That night, a knock at her door revealed Mrs. Martinez, the elderly woman from the 3rd floor, holding a covered dish that filled the hallway with the scent of spices. "Eat," she commanded, pushing past Kate into the apartment. "My daughter saw you at the Mercado, said you looked like a ghost." "Mrs. Martinez, I can't accept—" "Hush. I have 7 grandchildren. I know when a mother needs help." She surveyed the apartment with sharp eyes. "Too cold in here for babies. Where is the heat?" "The radiator works sometimes," Kate admitted. Mrs. Martinez muttered something in Spanish that sounded like a curse. "Tomorrow my son brings you a space heater. No arguments." The unexpected kindness brought tears to Kate's eyes. "Thank you." Later that week, a package waited outside her door, a box of gently used baby clothes with a note from the community church 3 blocks over. Kate spread them on her bed, touching each tiny garment with wonder. Most were gender-neutral, yellows and greens, some slightly faded but all clean and intact. "Look," she told her growing belly, "people are good, remember that." That night, Kate wrote in her journal, a detailed plan taking shape. Seattle or Portland seemed most promising. Affordable housing, good hospitals, distance from the Bennett sphere of influence. She calculated costs meticulously. 5 cribs, 5 car seats, diapers for 5 infants. The numbers were staggering, but she refused to be daunted. Standing at her window, looking out at the Bronx streetscape so different from the gleaming Manhattan skyline visible from Richard's penthouse, Kate felt a fierce clarity. "They'll never know what they lost," she whispered, one hand on her belly where 5 lives grew stronger each day. Their loss, not ours. While Kate dozed over her budget calculations for 5 babies, she had no idea that in a few days, a fainting spell at the cafe would place her directly in the path of the woman who would completely change the course of her life and help her build an empire. The relentless February wind howled outside Kate's apartment window as she woke with a start, her neck stiff from falling asleep at the folding table. Papers with budget calculations were stuck to her cheek, and her laptop had long since gone to sleep. 6 months pregnant with quintuplets, her body demanded rest at the most inconvenient times. 5 more hours until my shift, she murmured, struggling to her feet. In the bathroom mirror, Kate barely recognized herself. Her once vibrant complexion had faded to a pallid gray, dark circles permanently etched beneath her eyes. Her chestnut hair, previously her pride, hung limp and dull. The woman who had confidently presented investment strategies to boardrooms of executives now looked like a ghost of herself. She showered quickly in the lukewarm water. Hot water was a luxury that rarely lasted more than 3 minutes in this building, and dressed in her increasingly limited wardrobe. Her cafe uniform strained against her growing belly, safety pins holding together what buttons could not. "Just get through today," she told her reflection, "one day at a time." The pre-dawn journey to Brewer's Cafe had become a blur of mechanical movements. Subway stairs that once posed no challenge now left her breathless. The walk from the station to the cafe seemed to lengthen each day. By 5:15, Kate was tying her apron with trembling fingers. The morning rush began precisely at 6, when investment bankers and hedge fund managers streamed in, demanding their complicated coffee orders with barely a glance at the person serving them. "Double espresso, no foam, 1 pump vanilla," Kate recited, her voice steady despite the wave of dizziness washing over her. "$4.75, please." The customer, a woman in a Burberry coat Kate once could have afforded, slid her credit card across the counter without looking up from her phone. Kate recognized her as a junior executive from her former firm. "Catherine?" The woman looked up, surprise registering on her perfectly made-up face. "I hardly recognized you." Kate maintained her professional smile. "Good morning, Vanessa. Your espresso will be right up." Vanessa leaned in, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Everyone's talking about, Richard's been telling people you tried to trap him. Is it true you're having triplets?" "Quintuplets, actually," Kate replied, her voice impressively steady. "Your espresso is ready." Vanessa's eyes widened. "My God! How will you possibly manage, especially now that you're—" She gestured vaguely at Kate's apron. "I manage just fine. Have a nice day." Kate turned to the next customer, effectively dismissing the woman. By 10 o'clock, the morning rush had subsided, and Kate was restocking the napkin dispensers when the room began to spin. She gripped the counter, trying to steady herself, but the dizziness intensified. The last thing she remembered was the floor rushing up to meet her. "Miss? Can you hear me?" Kate blinked, disoriented. She was lying on the cafe floor, a small crowd of concerned faces peering down at her. Directly above, a woman with silver-streaked dark hair and intelligent eyes held her wrist, checking her pulse. "There you are," the woman said. "Don't try to sit up yet. I've called an ambulance." "No ambulance," Kate protested weakly. "Can't afford it." "I've already paid for it," the woman replied matter-of-factly. "I'm Eleanor Hayes. You've been serving me coffee for 3 weeks now." Kate tried to place the name and face. Eleanor Hayes, the woman who always ordered a simple black coffee, left a generous tip, and worked on a high-end laptop in the corner for hours. She'd never really looked at Kate before, at least not that Kate had noticed. "I'm fine," Kate insisted, attempting to sit up. "Just stood too quickly." "You're approximately 6 months pregnant with multiples, severely anemic based on your pallor, and you just lost consciousness for nearly a minute," Eleanor stated clinically. "You're not fine." Marissa, the cafe manager, hovered nervously nearby. "Catherine, maybe you should take the rest of the day off." The ambulance arrived minutes later, and despite her protests, Kate found herself being loaded onto a stretcher. Eleanor Hayes followed, carrying Kate's purse and speaking with an authority that brooked no argument. "I'll ride with her," she informed the paramedics. In the ambulance, Kate's embarrassment gave way to panic. "My other job, I'm supposed to be at Brookfield Properties at noon, and I can't afford a hospital stay." Eleanor regarded her thoughtfully. "Catherine Wilson, Harvard Law, class of 2016, formerly of Turner and Hayes Investment Group. I did my research while waiting for the ambulance." Kate stiffened. "How did you—" "I make it my business to know talented people," Eleanor replied, "even when they're serving me coffee instead of utilizing their considerable skills." At New York Presbyterian, Kate was admitted immediately, hooked up to IV fluids and monitors. Eleanor remained, working on her laptop in a corner of the room while doctors examined Kate. "Severe dehydration, anemia, and exhaustion," the doctor concluded, reviewing her chart. "Ms. Wilson, with a quintuplet pregnancy, you should be on bed rest, not working multiple jobs." "That's not an option," Kate replied quietly. After the doctor left, Eleanor closed her laptop and approached the bed. "Tell me everything." Perhaps it was the exhaustion or the relief of finally having someone ask, but Kate found herself revealing the entire story. Harvard, Richard Bennett, the cruel rejection, the Bennett-orchestrated professional sabotage, her desperate 3-job juggling act. Eleanor listened without interruption, her expression hardening as the tale unfolded. When Kate finished, Eleanor remained silent for several moments. "The Bennett family," she finally said, "has a history of destroying what they can't control. You know them?" "I know of them." Eleanor's smile was grim. 20 years ago, I was a promising software engineer with a patent that threatened one of their subsidiaries. Senator Bennett personally ensured my research funding was cut. I had to start over from nothing." Kate stared at the successful woman before her, seeing her in a new light. "But you survived it." "More than survived. I built something better than they could imagine." Eleanor leaned forward. "Men like Richard Bennett believe their power is absolute. Proving them wrong is the sweetest revenge." A nurse entered to check Kate's vitals, interrupting their conversation. When she left, Eleanor abruptly changed topics. "I own a technology company in Seattle, Hayes Technologies. We're small but growing, focused on artificial intelligence solutions. I need someone with financial acumen and analytical skills." Kate blinked, uncertain she'd heard correctly. "Are you offering me a job?" "Administrative role to start, flexible hours, comprehensive health insurance, and the opportunity to grow with the company." Eleanor handed her a business card. "The position comes with relocation assistance." "But you barely know me," Kate protested. "I know enough. Harvard doesn't graduate fools and Turner and Hayes doesn't hire mediocrity." Eleanor's eyes softened slightly. "I also know what it's like to have everything taken away by powerful men who see women as either decorations or threats, never equals." Kate clutched the business card, hope flickering for the first time in months. "I can't accept charity." "This isn't charity," Eleanor said firmly. "This is recognizing talent when I see it. You have a mind for numbers and strategy. I need that. The fact that you're expecting 5 children is irrelevant to your qualifications." "But the babies are a bonus," Eleanor continued briskly. "I've always thought offices should have more life in them." 3 days later, Kate was discharged with strict instructions for prenatal care. Eleanor had handled everything: medical bills, paperwork, even arrangements for Kate's Bronx apartment to be packed up by a professional service. "Seattle's waiting," Eleanor said, helping Kate into a town car. "My assistant has found you a 2-bedroom apartment near the office. It's modest, but clean, and in a good school district." "I don't know how to thank you," Kate said, emotion threatening to overwhelm her. "Succeed. That's all the thanks I need." The week passed in a whirlwind of preparations. Mrs. Martinez cried when Kate told her she was leaving, then pressed a package of homemade cookies into her hands. "For the journey. Write to me when the babies come." On her last night in New York, Kate requested a detour on the way to the airport. The driver looked puzzled but complied, pulling up across from the towering Bennett Industries headquarters in Midtown. "Wait here, please," Kate said, stepping out into the cool evening air. She stood on the sidewalk, gazing up at the gleaming skyscraper illuminated against the night sky. From somewhere inside that building, Richard Bennett had made the calls that destroyed her career. Behind those glass walls, decisions were made that had intended to break her completely. A well-dressed couple brushed past her, the man commenting, "Beautiful building, isn't it? They say old Bennett controls half the city." Kate didn't respond, her eyes fixed on the building. In her mind, she saw not just the present structure but the future, a future where she would return not as Catherine Wilson, the discarded girlfriend, but as someone Richard Bennett would be forced to reckon with. "One day we'll come back," she whispered to her unborn children, one hand resting protectively on her belly. "And when that day comes, Richard Bennett will know he made the biggest mistake of his life." She turned away, walking with newfound determination back to the waiting car. As the vehicle pulled away from the curb, Kate didn't look back. Her focus was entirely on what lay ahead: Seattle, Eleanor Hayes, and the first step toward building something that would one day eclipse everything the Bennetts had tried to take from her. As the plane took off toward Seattle, Kate had no idea that Eleanor Hayes wasn't merely offering her a job, but inadvertently providing the first rung on the ladder to building a technological empire that would one day make Bennett Industries look like an outdated and irrelevant operation. The plane touched down at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport under a blanket of gray clouds. Kate pressed her forehead against the cool window, watching raindrops race down the glass. The weather seemed fitting, a clean slate washed by rain, so different from the harsh New York winter she'd left behind. Eleanor stood waiting in the arrivals area, umbrella in hand and a determined smile on her face. "Welcome to your new life," she said, helping Kate with her single suitcase. "The rest of your things should arrive by the end of the week." Kate stepped outside, inhaling the distinctive scent of evergreens mixed with rain. "It smells like possibility," she murmured. "That's the Pacific Northwest for you. We bottle it and call it hope." The drive from the airport took them through downtown Seattle and then east toward a residential neighborhood with tree-lined streets. Eleanor pulled up in front of a modest 2-story building with a small, well-kept garden in front. "Third floor, apartment 3B, Eleanor said, handing Kate a set of keys. "It's furnished. Nothing fancy, but functional. I took the liberty of stocking the refrigerator." Kate stepped into the apartment and froze. After months in her Bronx shoebox, the space seemed enormous. A real living room with actual furniture, a separate bedroom, and most surprisingly, a second, smaller bedroom already set up with 5 matching cribs. "Eleanor, I can't accept this," Kate whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "The cribs are from the office staff. Consider it a welcome gift." Eleanor walked to the window, which offered a view of Puget Sound in the distance. The neighborhood has good schools, there's a park 2 blocks away, and you're 15 minutes from the office. Kate ran her hand over the back of a comfortable-looking sofa, not new but clean and sturdy. This is too much. It's enough to start, Eleanor corrected. Take the weekend to settle in. Monday morning, 9 o'clock, you start your new position. Monday arrived with a persistent drizzle that locals barely seemed to notice. Kate dressed in her most professional maternity outfit, black pants and a navy blouse that just barely accommodated her growing belly. At 26 weeks pregnant with quintuplets, she looked as though she was carrying a basketball team. Hayes Technologies occupied the top floor of a converted warehouse in the South Lake Union district. The space was open and airy, with exposed brick walls, large windows, and about a dozen workstations arranged in collaborative clusters. "Everyone, this is Catherine Wilson, our new financial analyst," Eleanor announced to the small team. "Catherine, meet the Brain Trust." 8 curious faces turned toward Kate, expressions welcoming rather than judgmental. A young man with wild hair and glasses approached first. "David Chen, lead programmer. I'm absolutely hopeless with spreadsheets, so you're already my favorite person." One by one, the team introduced themselves, a mix of programmers, designers, and business development specialists. No administrative assistants, no receptionists. "I thought I was being hired for an administrative role," Kate whispered to Eleanor. "I said that's where you'd start," Eleanor replied. "I didn't specify how long you'd stay there." Kate's workstation was positioned near the windows, with an ergonomic chair that actually supported her back properly. Her computer was top of the line, with dual monitors and the latest financial software. "Your first task," Eleanor said, dropping a folder on Kate's desk, "is to review our current business model and tell me what's wrong with it." Kate blinked. "That's unusually direct. I don't have time for corporate niceties. We're developing something revolutionary, but our revenue structure is holding us back. Fix it." Working from home during her final trimester, Kate dove into Hayes Technologies' financial structure with the same analytical precision that had once made her a rising star at Turner & Hayes. Between doctor's appointments and prenatal classes, she dissected the company's business model, identifying weaknesses and opportunities with surgical accuracy. "You're using a licensing model when you should be focused on software as a service," she explained during a video conference, her image filling screens around the Hayes Technologies conference room. The team watched, fascinated, as this very pregnant woman systematically dismantled and rebuilt their entire financial approach. By shifting to a subscription-based model with tiered pricing based on usage metrics, you'll create recurring revenue while providing clients greater flexibility, Kate continued, sharing her screen to display projections. "Your current approach leaves 63% of potential revenue untapped." When she finished, the room was silent for a moment before David let out a low whistle. "Did you just quadruple our projected annual revenue?" he asked. "Potentially," Kate replied, "if we implement these changes within the next quarter." Eleanor, watching from the head of the table, allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. "I told you she was worth relocating." 3 weeks later, Kate was in the middle of another video conference when the first contraction hit. She maintained her composure, continuing her presentation to potential investors who seemed impressed by her analysis. As you can see from slide 17, the market penetration potential increases dramatically when... She paused, breathing through another contraction. "When we adjust our target demographic to include mid-size enterprises." The moment the call ended, Kate called Eleanor. "I think the babies are coming. 2 months early. Stay calm. I'm sending David with the car. I'll meet you at the hospital." Kate had barely packed her hospital bag when David arrived, flustered and excited. "I've never driven a pregnant woman before. Should I run red lights? People do that in movies." "Just drive normally," Kate said, then gasped as another contraction gripped her, but maybe a little faster than usual. At Seattle Grace Hospital, events moved with frightening speed. Words like premature, emergency C-section, and NICU swirled around Kate as she was wheeled into an operating room. Through it all, Eleanor remained by her side, a steady presence in surgical scrubs. "I'll be here when you come out," Eleanor promised as the anesthesia began to take effect. "All of you." The next 12 hours passed in a blur of pain, fear, and finally, 5 tiny cries that sounded to Kate like the most beautiful music on earth. Madison, Olivia, Emma, Tyler, and Jackson Wilson were born on April 12th, each weighing under 3 pounds, but all with surprising strength for their size. 5 perfect babies, the doctor announced, showing Kate each tiny face before they were whisked away to the neonatal intensive care unit. "You did amazingly well, Ms. Wilson." In the recovery room, Kate found Eleanor waiting as promised, looking uncharacteristically emotional. "Congratulations," she said simply. "They're fighters, just like their mother." The following weeks established a new routine. Kate divided her time between the NICU, where her tiny babies fought for strength in their incubators, and her laptop, where she continued to refine Hayes Technologies' financial strategy. The company became her lifeline, the work keeping her grounded while her children gained ounce by precious ounce. What she hadn't expected was how the small Hayes Technologies team rallied around her. They created a schedule, ensuring Kate had home-cooked meals delivered daily. David set up a specialized calendar system to track medical appointments. The lead designer, Sophia, organized a nursery preparation team that transformed the second bedroom in Kate's apartment into an efficiently arranged space for 5 infants. "Why are you all doing this?" Kate asked Sophia one evening as they assembled the 5th changing table. "Eleanor told us what happened to you in New York," Sophia replied, testing the sturdiness of the table. "Besides, we're a startup. We stick together." Eleanor visited the NICU regularly, standing beside Kate as they watched the 5 tiny babies gradually growing stronger. "My mother always said family is who shows up when you need them," she observed one evening. "Looks like you've gained a new family." 3 months after their birth, the quintuplets were finally released from the hospital. First Madison, the largest and strongest, followed gradually by her siblings. Kate's apartment transformed into a carefully orchestrated symphony of feeding schedules, diaper changes, and brief moments of sleep whenever possible. Through it all, she continued working, often with at least one baby in her lap or strapped to her chest. The Hayes Technologies team adapted, becoming accustomed to video calls punctuated by infant noises. One night, after finally getting all 5 babies to sleep simultaneously, a rare miracle, Kate noticed a pattern in the monitoring data from the baby's apnea sensors. The way the alerts predicted potential breathing issues before they occurred reminded her of something. She opened her laptop, began typing frantically, and was still working when dawn broke. By the time Eleanor arrived to check on her, a daily ritual that had developed without discussion, Kate had created a rough flowchart that would eventually change everything. "Eleanor, look at this," she said, eyes bright with exhaustion and excitement. "What if we could predict patterns of behavior with the same precision that the doctors monitor vital signs?" Eleanor studied the diagram Kate had created, her expression shifting from curiosity to growing excitement. "This isn't just about baby monitors. No, it's about predictive analysis applied to human behavior." Kate's fingers flew over the keyboard. The same algorithms that predict when a baby might stop breathing could predict consumer behavior, market shifts, even security threats. "This is far beyond what we've been developing," Eleanor said slowly. "It's what you've been trying to develop," Kate corrected. "I just saw the connection because I've been staring at 5 different monitoring systems for months." Eleanor pulled up a chair, and together they refined the concept, their excitement growing as the potential became clearer. In the background, 5 babies slept peacefully, unaware that their monitoring devices had just inspired what would become a revolutionary algorithm. "This isn't just a product, Catherine," Eleanor said finally, staring at the completed outline. "This could change everything." With 5 babies sleeping around her and the first draft of an algorithm that would revolutionize artificial intelligence on her laptop, Kate couldn't imagine that just 6 years later she would become the majority partner in the company, after Eleanor recognized that her protégé had become the true visionary of the business. 6 years passed like a whirlwind of milestones, breakthroughs, and growth, both for the Quintuplets and for Hayes Technologies. On a bright spring morning, Kate stood in her kitchen, orchestrating the organized chaos that constituted breakfast for 5 6-year-olds, each with their own distinctive personality now clearly evident. "Madison, please stop correcting your brother's math homework. Tyler can count just fine," Kate said, slicing apples with practiced efficiency. Madison, her chestnut hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, adjusted her small, wire-rimmed glasses. "But Mom, he's using an inefficient method for multiplication. I showed him the lattice technique last week." Tyler looked up from his worksheet, his blue eyes, so disturbingly like Richard's, flashing with indignation. "My way works too, Mrs. Peterson said there's more than one way to solve a problem." "Both methods are valid," Kate said diplomatically, setting plates before each child. "Finish your breakfast, everyone. The bus comes in 20 minutes. Olivia was already in her swimsuit beneath her school clothes, ready for afternoon practice. At 6, she was already swimming with 8-year-olds, her natural affinity for water apparent from her first bath. Emma sat quietly reading a book about climate change, occasionally making notes in the margin, a habit Kate recognized from her own academic days. Jackson, the youngest by 4 minutes, carefully arranged his breakfast in specific patterns before eating, humming a Bach prelude under his breath. His violin lesson wasn't until tomorrow, but he practiced the fingerings against the edge of the table. Kate marveled at these 5 extraordinary beings, her greatest achievement and constant reminder that sometimes the worst moments in life lead to unexpected blessings. She checked her watch, a modest Seiko that had replaced her Cartier, sold during those desperate months in the Bronx. Backpacks by the door, lunchboxes inside, homework folders checked, she called out the familiar morning mantra. "Madison, don't forget your science club permission slip." After shepherding the Quintuplets onto the school bus, Kate drove to the Hayes Technologies office, now occupying 3 floors of the renovated warehouse. In 6 years, the company had grown from 8 employees to 72, with clients ranging from regional businesses to Fortune 500 companies. The predictive algorithm Kate had developed while watching her baby's monitors had evolved into Quinn, Quantitative Understanding Intelligent Network, a revolutionary AI system that could predict consumer behavior with unprecedented accuracy. Kate parked her modest sedan, practicality still governed her choices despite her growing success, and entered the building where her life had been reborn. "Morning, Ms. Wilson Hayes," called the receptionist. Eleanor had insisted Kate add Hayes to her surname 3 years ago when she'd made Kate her partner. "The investors from Tokyo are set up in Conference Room A." Kate nodded, mentally reviewing the presentation she'd prepared. The Japanese investment group was considering a $20 million stake in Hayes Technologies, a deal that would allow them to expand internationally. Eleanor met her at the conference room door, elegant as always in a tailored suit that complemented her silver-streaked hair. "Ready to dazzle them?" she asked with a smile. "Always," Kate replied, straightening her shoulders. 2 hours later, the investors were signing preliminary agreements, impressed by Kate's comprehensive understanding of both the technology and Asian markets. "Most impressive, Ms. Wilson Hayes," said Mr. Tanaka, the lead investor, as they shook hands. "Your predictive models show remarkable insight into consumer behavior patterns we've observed in Tokyo. Quinn is designed to recognize human patterns across cultural differences," Kate explained. "We believe technology should adapt to humanity, not the other way around." After the investors departed, Eleanor closed the conference room door and turned to Kate with an unusually serious expression. "We need to talk." Kate felt a momentary flutter of anxiety, a remnant from those terrible days when "we need to talk" had preceded career destruction and personal humiliation. Is something wrong? Wrong? Quite the opposite. Eleanor gestured to the chairs. I've been thinking about the future of this company, my future specifically. You're not ill, are you? Kate asked, immediately concerned. Eleanor laughed. Healthy as a horse, but I'm 63, Catherine. I've built companies, sold companies, and now I've helped build something truly special. But I'm ready for something new. You're leaving. The thought seemed impossible. Eleanor had become mentor, friend, and something of a mother figure to Kate. Transitioning, Eleanor corrected. I want to step back from day-to-day operations, take a position on the board, focus on our foundation work, maybe teach a little. She leaned forward. And I want you to take over as CEO. Kate stared at her. Me? But this is your company. You built it from nothing. We built it, Eleanor corrected. And let's be honest, your algorithm transformed my modest consulting firm into something revolutionary. The Quinn system is your vision, not mine. But no buts. Eleanor placed a folder on the table. I've already discussed it with the board. They agree unanimously. Hayes Technologies should become Quintessence Technologies, a name that honors both the breakthrough technology and the 5 inspirations behind it. Kate felt tears prick her eyes. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Eleanor replied simply. You've earned this, Catherine. Not many people recover from what Richard Bennett did to you. Fewer still would have turned it into something magnificent. Later that evening, the transformation was made official during a company-wide meeting. Employees cheered as Eleanor announced both her transition to chairwoman and Kate's promotion to CEO. The new company name, Quintessence Technologies, was unveiled to enthusiastic applause. To our new CEO, Eleanor raised a champagne glass, the true visionary among us. Kate blinked back tears as she accepted the toast. 6 years ago, I arrived in Seattle with nothing but determination and 5 tiny lives depending on me. Eleanor didn't just offer me a job, she offered me a chance to rebuild. What we've created together proves that sometimes when one door closes violently in your face, it forces you to build an entirely new house, one with stronger foundations. That night, Kate worked late in her office, the quintuplets asleep on the comfortable sectional sofa she'd had installed specifically for late work nights. Madison's science textbook lay open beside her, Olivia's swim cap peeked from her sports bag. Emma's debate notes were scattered across the coffee table, and the twins, Tyler and Jackson, had fallen asleep mid-chess game. A knock at her door revealed Eleanor, coat draped over her arm. Still here? It's nearly midnight. Just finishing the transition paperwork, Kate gestured to the sleeping children. They're used to it. Eleanor crossed to the sofa, gently adjusting a blanket over Jackson. I never thought I'd see the day when a single mother of quintuplets would become one of the most powerful women in tech. Kate saved the document she was working on. It's not enough yet. I need to build something so large it can't be ignored. By it, you mean you, and by ignored, you mean by Richard Bennett. Eleanor's perception was, as always, unnervingly accurate. Perhaps, Kate admitted. Is that petty? It's human, Eleanor replied. Just don't let it be your only motivation. 2 weeks later, a journalist from Tech Innovators magazine interviewed Kate in her office. The quintuplets' artwork decorated one wall, a deliberate choice that humanized the space and reminded visitors of what truly mattered to her. Ms. Wilson-Hayes, there are rumors you recently declined an acquisition offer of $1.5 billion. May I ask why? The reporter leaned forward, recorder in hand. Kate smiled, the expression not quite reaching her eyes. Because I know exactly what we've built here. And it's not just about money. Later that month, Kate flew to New York for a technology conference. After her keynote address on humanizing artificial intelligence, she took a detour on her way back to the hotel, instructing her driver to pass by the Bennett Industries headquarters. The imposing building looked exactly as she remembered it, gleaming and self-important against the Manhattan skyline. A security guard approached as she stared up at the structure. "Can I help you, ma'am? Are you looking for someone?" he asked, not recognizing the woman whose company was quickly becoming a major player in tech circles. Kate smiled. "No, just checking on the competition, or what's left of it." Back in the car, Kate discreetly took a selfie with the building in the background, sending it to Eleanor with the caption, "Phase 1 of the long-term plan complete." That evening, Kate reviewed the financial news before bed, a habit she'd maintained since her Wall Street days. A small item caught her attention. Bennett Industries struggles to adapt to changing market, stock down 12% this quarter. The accompanying photo showed Senator Bennett announcing his retirement, with Richard standing grimly beside him, looking strained and older than his years. Kate closed the news app, a satisfied smile playing at her lips. Richard Bennett would soon be taking control of his family's struggling company, completely unaware that across the country, the woman he'd discarded as worthless was building something that would one day overshadow everything he had inherited. As she drifted to sleep, Kate's mind filled not with thoughts of revenge, but with ideas for Quintessence's next breakthrough. The algorithm needed refinement, the Asian expansion required careful planning, and Madison's science fair project needed her input tomorrow. Success, Kate had discovered, was the most effective response to those who once deemed you unworthy. While Quintessence Technologies surpassed the $100 million valuation mark, Richard Bennett was about to take control of the struggling Bennett Industries following his father's retirement, completely unaware that his greatest future competitor would be the woman he had once dismissed as insignificant. Richard Bennett was taking control of his family's struggling company, completely unaware that 9 years after that rainy night in Chicago, his most significant competitor was the woman whose heart he had shattered. As Kate closed the financial news article, a text message illuminated her phone. The image showed a Bennett Industries press release announcing Richard's official ascension to CEO following his father's health-related retirement, a thinly veiled euphemism for the string of scandals that had plagued the aging senator. "Thought you'd want to see this," wrote Eleanor, who despite her semi-retirement still monitored the competition with hawk-like precision. Kate studied Richard's face in the accompanying photo. 9 years had etched lines around his eyes, a slight paunch now strained against his bespoke suit, and a forced smile failed to mask the tension in his jaw. The Bennett Industries logo loomed behind him, once a symbol of unassailable corporate power, now representing a company struggling to maintain relevance in a rapidly evolving marketplace. "Some empires fall while others rise," Kate typed back, then set her phone aside to focus on the stack of quarterly reports awaiting her review. 9 years after the Quintuplets' birth, Quintessence Technologies had transformed from a promising startup into a technological powerhouse. The company now occupied a gleaming headquarters in downtown Seattle with over 600 employees and offices in Tokyo, London, and Singapore. Kate's algorithm, refined and expanded, had revolutionized predictive analytics across multiple industries, from healthcare to finance to retail. "Mom! Tyler reprogrammed my alarm clock to play the Star Wars theme at 4:30 this morning." 9-year-old Emma burst into Kate's home office, her eloquence remarkable even when lodging sibling complaints. Kate suppressed a smile. "Tyler, is this true?" The boy appeared in the doorway, unrepentant. "She said my coding skills weren't as good as Jackson's. It was a practical demonstration proving otherwise." "Your demonstration was unnecessarily disruptive," Emma countered, her vocabulary reflecting countless hours of competitive debate practice. "Furthermore, you violated the sibling privacy protocol we established last summer." Kate marveled at her children's extraordinary development. At 9, each quintuplet had already distinguished themselves in ways that sometimes left her breathless with pride, and occasionally exhausted by their intensity. Madison, the eldest by minutes, was participating in a special mathematics program at the University of Washington, her analytical mind processing complex equations that challenged graduate students. Olivia had recently broken the state junior swimming record, her powerful strokes and natural affinity for water marking her as an Olympic hopeful. Emma's gift for persuasive speaking had made her the youngest member ever accepted to the regional debate team, where she routinely bested teenagers twice her age. The twins, Tyler and Jackson, while identical in appearance, had diverged remarkably in their talents. Tyler's programming abilities had already earned him recognition from tech blogs when he developed a scheduling app that seamlessly coordinated the quintuplets' complex array of activities. Jackson, the most sensitive and artistic of the five, moved audiences to tears with his violin performances, his small fingers dancing across the strings with preternatural skill. As Kate mediated the dispute between Emma and Tyler, her phone rang with the specialized tone reserved for urgent business matters. "I need to take this," she told the children. "We'll discuss appropriate uses of programming skills at dinner." The call brought exhilarating news. Quintessence Technologies' valuation had officially crossed the $1 billion threshold, making them a certified unicorn in Silicon Valley parlance. Kate listened to the financial advisor's enthusiastic projections, her mind already racing ahead to the company's next evolution. That evening, as champagne flowed in the Quintessence boardroom, Kate stood before her team, a small pendant with 5 birthstones, one for each quintuplet, hanging at her throat. 9 years ago, Quintessence existed only as an idea born from watching 5 tiny heartbeats on hospital monitors, she told the assembled executives. Today, we've broken the billion-dollar barrier because we understand that technology should serve humanity, not control it. Our success stems from recognizing patterns in data, in markets, and in human behavior. The celebration continued late into the night, but Kate slipped away early, eager to return to the waterfront home she had purchased the previous year, a stunning modern structure of glass and sustainable materials overlooking Puget Sound. The house represented everything she had accomplished, spacious enough for 5 energetic children, designed with both beauty and functionality in mind, and situated in one of Seattle's most prestigious neighborhoods. Kate found Madison still awake, hunched over complex equations at the kitchen island. "The celebration went well?" the girl asked without looking up, her pencil never pausing. "Very well. We're officially a billion-dollar company." Madison nodded, as if this were merely the expected outcome of a well-designed experiment. Statistically predictable given our fourth-quarter performance and market positioning. Kate smiled at her daughter's matter-of-fact assessment. At 9, Madison already understood valuation metrics that MBA students struggled to grasp. "Shouldn't you be asleep? You have the state mathematics competition tomorrow." Final review. The university team's algorithm contains a fundamental flaw in its approach to nonlinear equations. Madison pushed her glasses up with one finger, a gesture so reminiscent of Kate that it created an ache of tenderness. The next day, Kate sat in the audience as Madison systematically dismantled the solutions presented by high school competitors, her clear voice carrying through the auditorium. "While the traditional approach would suggest this outcome, I've identified an alternative method that produces more consistent results across variable sets," Madison explained to the stunned judges, her small fingers confidently manipulating complex formulas on the whiteboard. When Madison was announced as the winner, Kate applauded proudly while simultaneously responding to urgent emails on her phone, the constant balancing act of her life. The following weekend brought Olivia's swimming championship, where Kate cheered from the bleachers as her daughter sliced through the water with powerful strokes, finishing 3 seconds ahead of the previous junior record. Later that month, Emma led her debate team to victory in a regional competition, arguing persuasively about environmental policy changes with a sophistication that left judges checking her age in disbelief. Tyler demonstrated his latest app to the Quintessence development team, the executives exchanging impressed glances as the 9-year-old confidently explained his coding methodology. Jackson reduced an audience to tears at his violin recital, his small face serious with concentration as he performed a piece typically reserved for conservatory students. Throughout it all, Kate maintained a careful digital file tracking Bennett Industries' declining market position. She noted each misstep, each failed acquisition attempt, each quarter of diminishing returns. The file wasn't born of obsession but of strategic awareness. Knowing your competitor's weaknesses was simply good business. On a bright autumn morning, Kate gave the Quintuplets a tour of their new home, a stunning mansion overlooking the water that made their previous house seem modest by comparison. "Each of you has your own room, designed to your specifications," Kate explained, leading them through the soaring entryway. "Madison, your study area has the mathematical modeling software you requested. Olivia, the pool house includes training equipment calibrated to Olympic standards." The children explored their personalized spaces with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Emma immediately testing the acoustics for debate practice, Tyler examining the smart home features he could potentially enhance, Jackson heading straight for the music room with its perfect acoustics. That evening, in her private office overlooking the sound, Kate studied the digital wall displaying real-time financial data. A prominent section tracked Bennett Industries' stock performance, a jagged line trending steadily downward over the past 36 months. A knock at the door preceded Eleanor's entrance bearing a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. "Celebrating the new house? Or monitoring the competition's slow-motion collapse?" she asked, nodding toward the Bennett data. "Both have their satisfactions," Kate admitted, accepting a glass, though one considerably more than the other. Eleanor settled into a chair, studying Kate thoughtfully. "I never imagined the day when a single mother of quintuplets would become one of the most powerful women in technology." "It's still not enough," Kate replied, eyes fixed on the Bennett Industries logo. "I need to build something so large, so undeniable, that it's impossible to ignore." "Your revenge portfolio is performing admirably," Eleanor observed dryly. "But is it still about him, after all this time?" Kate considered the question, swirling the wine in her glass. Not revenge exactly. Validation, perhaps. Proof that his assessment was fundamentally flawed. She smiled slightly. Besides, it's good business to monitor failing competitors. Later that week, Kate explained to the quintuplets why they carried the Wilson Hayes surname, a question Madison had raised after a genetics assignment at school. "Eleanor is family as much as I am," Kate told them, seated in the living room with 5 attentive faces turned toward her. "She believed in us when we had nothing, and someday you'll understand the complete story." "Is it about our biological father?" Madison asked directly, her analytical mind always seeking complete data sets. Kate hesitated. "That's a conversation for when you're older. For now, know that family is defined by love and presence, not genetics." The following month, Kate declined an acquisition offer of $1.5 billion, causing ripples of surprise throughout the tech industry. A reporter cornered her after a conference keynote. "There are rumors you turned down an astronomical acquisition offer. Why would you refuse such a valuation?" Kate's smile revealed nothing. "Because I understand precisely what we've built, and it's not merely a question of monetary value." The truth, which she kept to herself, was that no amount of money could purchase what Quintessence represented, not just technological innovation, but personal vindication. The company was living proof that Richard Bennett had been catastrophically wrong about her worth, her abilities, and her future. That night, Kate fell asleep with a business magazine open beside her, featuring Richard Bennett's strained face on the cover as he assumed control of Bennett Industries. The accompanying article detailed the company's struggles to remain relevant in a changing marketplace, with analysts questioning whether the younger Bennett possessed the vision to reverse the downward trajectory his father had initiated. Kate studied the signs of stress evident in Richard's expression, noting with satisfaction the gray at his temples and the tightness around his mouth. While she had been building something revolutionary, he had merely been waiting to inherit a diminishing empire. As she drifted to sleep, Kate couldn't know that in exactly 5 years, an invitation to receive an award in Chicago would place her face-to-face with Richard Bennett at his most vulnerable moment, and her most triumphant. As Quintessence Technologies reached the impressive valuation of $3.8 billion, Kate found herself facing a new challenge, one she hadn't anticipated despite her meticulous planning for nearly every aspect of her life. It began on a Tuesday morning when Madison, now 15, knocked on the door of Kate's home office, a determined expression on her face that Kate recognized as a prelude to difficult questions. "Mom, we need to talk about our genetic history," Madison said, adjusting her wire-rimmed glasses, a gesture she'd inherited from Kate. "I've been researching hereditary traits for my advanced biology project, and I've discovered some inconsistencies in our family narrative." Kate's fingers paused over her keyboard. She'd been reviewing acquisition proposals, the latest offering $5 billion for Quintessence, a figure she'd already decided to reject. What kind of inconsistencies? Madison placed a carefully organized folder on Kate's desk. Inside were family photos, printouts of genetic inheritance patterns, and most troublingly, a series of newspaper clippings featuring Richard Bennett at various social events. "Based on phenotypic expression and statistical probability, I've identified 3 potential candidates for our biological father." Madison's voice remained clinical, though her eyes betrayed her emotional investment. "The most likely candidate is Richard Bennett, current CEO of Bennett Industries." Kate carefully closed her laptop. This moment had been inevitable, she supposed. 15 years of questions answered with vague references to "your father wasn't ready for family life" could only satisfy curious minds for so long, especially minds as brilliant as her children's. "Where did you get these articles?" Kate asked, buying time to collect her thoughts. "Public records search, plus facial recognition software Tyler developed last summer." Madison's expression softened slightly. "Mom, we're not children anymore. We deserve to know the complete truth." Before Kate could respond, her office door opened wider as the other 4 quintuplets filed in. Clearly, this had been a coordinated effort. Olivia, fresh from swim practice, her athletic frame carrying the easy confidence of a champion. Emma, clutching a notepad, ready to chronicle this family meeting with her characteristic thoroughness. The twins, Tyler and Jackson, identical in appearance but standing distinctly apart, Tyler with the slightly impatient posture of a tech prodigy who believed most human interactions could be optimized, Jackson with the sensitive awareness of an artist. "We've discussed it privately," Emma announced, speaking for the group. "We believe we're entitled to know our complete biological history." Kate looked at these 5 extraordinary human beings, no longer the tiny fighters in NICU incubators, but teenagers on the cusp of adulthood, each remarkable in their own way. Their intelligence, their determination, their Bennett blue eyes. "You're right," Kate said finally. "You deserve the truth, all of it." She crossed to the bookshelf and removed a small landscape painting, a Puget Sound vista she'd purchased to commemorate Quintessence's first million in profit. Behind it was a wall safe, its combination a sequence of the quintuplets' birth dates. Inside lay a thick file folder that Kate had maintained for 15 years, the complete history she'd kept hidden. "This contains everything," Kate said, placing the folder on her desk. "From the beginning to now. It's not an easy story." For the next 3 hours, Kate revealed the complete narrative: her relationship with Richard, the cruel rejection, the systematic destruction of her career, and the desperate months that followed. She showed them photographs of herself and Richard from happier times, newspaper clippings announcing his engagement to someone from his social circle shortly after abandoning her, medical records from her pregnancy, and even the original lease for the tiny Bronx apartment. The quintuplets' reactions varied dramatically. Olivia paced the room, her athletic energy channeling into controlled fury. "How could he say we weren't his? It's biologically impossible to deny it." She pointed to Jackson's reflection in the window, the perfect Bennett jawline, The characteristic cleft chin, Emma, ever the diplomat, took copious notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. "What do you want us to do with this information, Mom? Should we contact him?" Tyler analyzed the situation with clinical detachment. Bennett Industries has been underperforming for years. Their stock has dropped 37% in the last 3 quarters alone. He appears to be in a vulnerable position professionally. Madison studied the financial reports Kate had collected, noting the declining fortunes of the Bennett family business compared to Quintessence's meteoric rise. The statistical probability that he regrets his decision is approximately 98.6%, given current market conditions. It was Jackson, the most empathetic of the 5, who asked the question that penetrated deepest. "Do you still hate him, Mom?" Kate considered this carefully. "Hate requires emotional investment I no longer have to spare. This isn't about hatred, it's about choices and consequences. He made his choices 15 years ago. I made mine. Now you have the right to make yours." The quintuplets exchanged glances, a silent communication system they'd developed in infancy. Madison, as usual, verbalized their collective thoughts. "We would like to meet him. Not for reconciliation, but for closure." "That's a significant decision," Kate cautioned. "Richard Bennett isn't just a person. He's the head of a powerful family with considerable influence." "Diminishing influence," Tyler corrected. "Quintessence surpassed Bennett Industries in market capitalization 3 years ago." Kate smiled slightly at her son's precise assessment. Nevertheless, approaching him directly could have unpredictable consequences. Their discussion was interrupted by a knock at the door. Kate's executive assistant, Diane, entered with an apologetic expression. "Sorry to interrupt, Ms. Wilson-Hayes, but this just arrived by courier. Marked urgent." Kate accepted the heavy cream envelope with its gold embossing. Inside was an invitation to receive the prestigious Callahan Award for Entrepreneurial Excellence at a gala in Chicago the following month. "Congratulations, Mom!" Emma exclaimed, reading over Kate's shoulder. "Chicago," Madison said thoughtfully, exchanging meaningful glances with her siblings. "Isn't that where—" "Yes," Kate confirmed. "That's where it all began." The quintuplets exchanged another round of their silent communication before Madison spoke again. "It seems the universe is offering a perfectly timed opportunity." Later that evening, after the quintuplets had retired to their rooms, Kate sat alone in her study, the invitation to Chicago beside the open file of Richard Bennett's history. She hadn't been back to Chicago since that rainy night 15 years ago. The symmetry was almost too perfect. Her phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor. "Have you seen the latest on Bennett? Rumor is he's seeking investors to shore up their faltering tech division. How ironic would it be if Quintessence became a potential acquisition partner?" Kate smiled at the thought, but didn't respond. Her mind was elsewhere, specifically on 5 extraordinary teenagers who had just had their understanding of their origins completely rewritten. She worried about the impact this knowledge would have on them, especially if they pursued meeting Richard. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Jackson stood in the doorway, violin case in hand, despite the late hour. "I couldn't sleep," he admitted. "I keep thinking about him, about Richard Bennett." Kate gestured for him to enter. "That's understandable." "I've been looking at his pictures online," Jackson continued, settling into a chair. "We have his eyes, his jawline too." "You do," Kate acknowledged. "But we have your determination, your resilience." Jackson's perceptiveness, as always, cut straight to the heart of things. "That seems more important than shared DNA." Kate reached across to squeeze his hand. "Much more important." "The others are planning something," Jackson confided. "Madison and Tyler especially. They think going to Chicago is the perfect opportunity to engineer a meeting." "And what do you think?" Kate asked. Jackson considered this. "I think sometimes you need to face the ghosts of your past to fully appreciate your present." With the wisdom that had always seemed beyond his years, he added, "We're not looking for a father, Mom. We already have everything we need." But perhaps we need to see him, to understand completely where we come from, so we can better determine where we're going. Over the next week, Kate observed her children with heightened awareness. They were conspiring. That much was obvious from their hushed conversations that stopped when she entered a room, from the browser histories cleared on their computers, from the significant glances they exchanged during family dinner. When they finally presented their proposal as a united front, Kate wasn't surprised. What did surprise her was their thoughtfulness. "We want to attend the Chicago Gala with you," Madison explained, speaking for the group. "And while there, we want to arrange a controlled meeting with Richard Bennett." "Not to disrupt your award ceremony," Emma clarified, "and not for dramatic confrontation." "It's for closure," Olivia added, "to finally see him in person and then move forward with our lives." Tyler, practical as always, had already researched Richard's schedule. "He'll be in Chicago that same weekend for a technology investment symposium. The statistical likelihood of engineering an accidental encounter is high." Kate studied these 5 remarkable humans she'd raised, their Bennett blue eyes filled with determination, their postures reflecting the confidence of adolescents who had never been made to feel unwanted or insufficient. The protective instinct that had fueled her for 15 years warred with the recognition of their right to know their complete history. "You understand that this will have consequences," she said carefully. "Not just for him, but potentially for you as well. The media, the public scrutiny." "We've discussed the variables," Madison assured her. "We believe the potential benefits outweigh the risks." Before Kate could respond, her assistant entered with another express delivery, this one a glossy magazine with a note attached. Kate recognized the handwriting immediately. Caroline Winters, her former Harvard roommate who now served as editor-in-chief at Vanity Fair. The note read simply, "Thought you might be interested in this. Richard Bennett is marrying Senator Miller's daughter the same weekend as your award ceremony. Same city, different circles. Unless someone bridges those circles." Kate looked up from the note to find 5 pairs of identical blue eyes watching her with perfect Bennett intensity. "It seems," she said slowly, "that the universe is offering more than one opportunity in Chicago." As the Quintessence corporate jet soared toward Chicago the following month, Kate couldn't know that her former Harvard roommate, now editor-in-chief at Vanity Fair, had just sent an additional invitation that would transform her award ceremony trip into a public confrontation that Chicago would never forget. The Quintessence corporate jet cut through the clouds, beginning its descent into Chicago O'Hare International Airport. Kate gazed out the window at the city skyline emerging through the morning mist, memories flooding back of that rainy night 15 years ago when Richard Bennett had thrown her clothes out the window and her life had shattered on Michigan Avenue. "Mom? Are you okay?" Madison's voice pulled Kate from her thoughts. "Just remembering," Kate replied, smoothing her Armani skirt, a far cry from the threadbare clothes she'd worn during her desperate months in the Bronx. "Chicago holds significant memories." The jet touched down with barely a bump, taxiing to the private hangar where a fleet of black SUVs awaited. The Quintuplets, each impeccably dressed in designer clothes that complemented their striking Bennett blue eyes, moved with the synchronized grace they'd developed since infancy. "Ms. Wilson Hayes, welcome to Chicago," the lead driver said, opening the door to the first vehicle. "Your suite at the Peninsula is prepared, and your schedule has been confirmed." Kate nodded, mentally comparing this reception to her last departure from Chicago, alone, pregnant, and devastated. "Thank you. The luggage goes directly to the hotel. We'll take the scenic route downtown." As the motorcade glided through the city streets, Kate pointed out landmarks to the Quintuplets. "That's Millennium Park, and there—" She paused as they passed an imposing glass tower. "That's the Bennett Industries headquarters." "Architecturally unremarkable," Tyler observed clinically. "Their infrastructure modernization efforts have been notably inadequate according to recent technological assessments." Emma leaned forward. "Is that where he rejected you, Mom?" "No," Kate replied, her voice steady, That was his personal residence on Michigan Avenue. We'll pass it shortly. The SUV turned onto the prestigious boulevard, and Kate found herself holding her breath as they approached the luxury high-rise where Richard had once lived. It looked exactly the same: elegant, imposing, exclusive. "The last time I was on this street," Kate said quietly, "I was counting change for dinner." Olivia reached over and squeezed her mother's hand. "And now you're staying in the Peninsula's presidential suite." The Peninsula Chicago welcomed them with the deferential efficiency reserved for VIP guests. The general manager himself escorted them to the palatial suite occupying the hotel's top floor, with sweeping views of the city and Lake Michigan beyond. "Ms. Wilson Hayes, we're honored to have you with us," he said, gesturing to the elegantly arranged fruit baskets, champagne, and personalized welcome gifts for each quintuplet. "The governor has asked if you would join him for breakfast tomorrow, and several media outlets have requested interviews regarding your Callahan Award." "Thank you," Kate replied. "Please have my assistant coordinate the schedule. For now, we'd like some privacy to settle in." Once alone, the quintuplets explored the lavish suite with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Madison immediately set up her laptop at the dining table, while Olivia investigated the Olympic-sized pool on the hotel's spa level. Emma settled into a plush armchair with the Chicago Tribune, scanning for any mentions of Richard Bennett's upcoming wedding. "Mom!" she called suddenly. "Look at this coincidence!" Kate crossed the room as Emma held up her iPad, displaying an article about the weekend's society events. Richard Bennett, CEO of Bennett Industries, will wed Vanessa Miller, daughter of Senator James Miller, in a lavish ceremony at the Chicago Botanic Garden on Saturday, Emma read aloud. The union represents a merger of two of Illinois' most influential families. Kate felt a curious detachment as she studied the accompanying photo of Richard and his much younger fiancée, a blonde woman with a practiced smile who couldn't be more than 30. Richard looked distinguished in an artificially maintained way, his hair suspiciously free of gray for a man approaching 50, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Genetic analysis suggests she's approximately 20 years his junior," Madison observed, peering over Emma's shoulder. "The Botanic Garden is an interesting venue choice," Jackson noted. "Wasn't your award ceremony originally scheduled there?" Kate nodded. "It was moved to the Art Institute last month due to a scheduling conflict. Now we know why." Tyler, who had been unusually quiet, looked up from his tablet. "I've accessed the guest list algorithm for the wedding. Security protocols are surprisingly penetrable." "Tyler," Kate admonished, though without much conviction. "Senator Miller, 3 congressmen, 2 governors, and a Supreme Court justice," Tyler continued, ignoring her protest, "plus the CEO of Meridian Technologies." "Our competitor?" Kate raised an eyebrow. "Potential acquisition target," Tyler corrected. "Their neural network architecture would complement our eastern expansion." Kate shook her head with a mixture of exasperation and pride. At 15, Tyler understood corporate strategy better than most MBA graduates. As evening approached, the quintuplets disappeared into one of the suite's bedrooms, voices lowered in conspiratorial discussion. Kate allowed them their privacy, understanding that they needed to process the reality of being so close to their biological father for the first time. Through the closed door, she could hear Madison's analytical tone, Olivia's passionate declarations, Emma's measured reasoning, and the occasional input from the twins. Their voices rose and fell, sometimes argumentative, sometimes in perfect agreement. An hour later, they emerged with the unified front that had characterized their approach to challenges since childhood. "We've reached a decision," Madison announced, adjusting her glasses in the gesture so reminiscent of Kate. "We want to attend the wedding." Kate's expression remained neutral. "For what purpose?" "Closure," Emma said, the family diplomat. "Not to disrupt or create drama, but to finally see him in person and then move forward with our lives." "We deserve to know where we come from," Olivia added, her athletic frame tense with emotion. not just through photos and stories but through direct observation. Kate studied each face, 5 variations on a theme, each carrying Richard's unmistakable features blended with her own. She saw determination in their identical blue eyes, the same determination that had carried her through those dark days in the Bronx. "You understand what this could mean," she said carefully. "Public attention, media scrutiny, questions about your origins that you may not be prepared to answer." "We've discussed all potential variables," Madison replied. "The benefits outweigh the risks." "Besides," Tyler added pragmatically, "with my facial recognition algorithm, I've calculated a 97.3% probability that he'll recognize us immediately. Bennett family genetic markers are particularly dominant in our phenotypic expression." Jackson, who had remained quiet throughout, finally spoke. "We need to see him, Mom. Not for revenge or confrontation, just to make him real, so we can stop wondering." Kate recognized the wisdom in her most sensitive child's words. For 15 years, Richard Bennett had been both villain and ghost in their family narrative, a powerful absence that shaped their lives despite never being present. "If this is truly what you all want," she said finally, "then I won't stand in your way." The following morning brought a flurry of activity as journalists arrived for scheduled interviews about Kate's entrepreneurial journey and the prestigious award she would receive. The Quintuplets remained in the background, observing with interest as their mother transformed into Catherine Wilson Hayes, visionary CEO of Quintessence Technologies, her responses to questions polished yet authentic. "Ms. Wilson Hayes, did you ever imagine when you started your company that you would reach this level of success?" asked a reporter from the Wall Street Journal. Kate smiled. "I always knew exactly what I was building. The only question was how long it would take the world to recognize its value." Between interviews, Kate's phone buzzed with a text from Caroline Winters, her Harvard roommate now running Vanity Fair. "Heard you're in Chicago same weekend as Bennett Miller wedding. Please tell me you're planning to attend. It would be the society event of the decade if you showed up with those remarkable quintuplets. My photographer is already assigned to the wedding, but I could be there personally within hours." Kate didn't respond, tucking the phone away as the next interviewer was ushered in. That evening, while the quintuplets were being fitted for the custom Armani outfits that had mysteriously appeared that afternoon, Eleanor's doing, Kate suspected, Kate found herself alone at the suite's bar, gazing out at the Chicago skyline illuminated against the night sky. The city had once witnessed her greatest humiliation. Now it would host her professional triumph and potentially the most consequential reunion of her life. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. The hotel manager entered, looking slightly flustered. "Ms. Wilson Hayes, I apologize for the intrusion, but Senator Bennett is in the lobby requesting to see you." Kate felt a momentary shock before realizing it would be Richard's father, not Richard himself. "Please show him up." Minutes later, the aging Senator Bennett entered the suite, leaning heavily on an ebony cane but still carrying himself with the imperious bearing that had intimidated congressional committees for decades. "Catherine Wilson," he said, deliberately omitting the Hayes surname. "You've done well for yourself." "Senator Bennett," Kate replied coolly, "this is unexpected." He settled himself on a chair without invitation, assessing the luxurious suite with a practiced eye. "I make it a point to know when potential threats enter my territory. Is that what I am? A threat?" Kate remained standing, the power dynamic clear in her relaxed posture. "Your company, Quintessence Technologies, isn't it, has been making remarkable inroads in sectors traditionally dominated by Bennett Industries." His tone suggested this was an unforgivable transgression. "Markets evolve, Senator. Some companies adapt, others become obsolete." The old man's eyes narrowed. "I understand you're receiving the Callahan Award tomorrow night. Impressive for someone who appeared in Chicago 15 years ago with nothing but ambition." The implication was clear. He remembered exactly who she was and what had happened. "I had considerably more than ambition, Senator. I had intelligence, determination, and 5 very good reasons to succeed." Kate's smile was glacial. "How is Richard? Looking forward to his wedding, I imagine?" A flash of uncertainty crossed the senator's face. "My son's affairs are his own concern." "Indeed they are," Kate agreed, "though sometimes affairs have unexpected consequences." Before the senator could respond, the bedroom door opened and Madison emerged, stopping short when she saw the visitor. The resemblance between her and Richard was unmistakable. The same jawline, the same penetrating blue eyes, the same analytical gaze. "Mom? The tailor needs your opinion on the alterations," Madison said, her eyes never leaving the senator's face. The old man stared at Madison, his complexion paling visibly. "Senator Bennett, this is my daughter Madison," Kate said smoothly, "one of my quintuplets." Madison crossed the room with graceful confidence, extending her hand. "Pleased to meet you, Senator. Your infrastructure legislation from the 1990s is frequently cited in my public policy research." The senator took her hand automatically, his expression fluctuating between shock and calculation. "Quintuplets," he repeated, the word heavy with implication. "Yes," Kate replied. "A statistical rarity, one in several million without fertility treatments. Almost as rare as the algorithm that made quintessence technologies worth $3.8 billion. Senator Bennett rose abruptly, his knuckles white around his cane. "I should be going. Retirement keeps me busier than the Senate ever did." At the door, he paused. "Catherine, whatever you're planning this weekend, I'm planning to accept an award for entrepreneurial excellence, Senator. Nothing more." After he left, Madison turned to Kate with a raised eyebrow. He recognized the Bennett genetic markers immediately. "Yes," Kate agreed, "and he'll be calling Richard within minutes." "Phase 1 complete," Madison noted with satisfaction. Later that night, as the quintuplets reviewed the final details of their plan for attending the wedding, Kate received another text from Caroline. "Senator Bennett was seen leaving your hotel looking like he'd seen a ghost. What exactly is happening in Chicago this weekend?" While the stylists finalized adjustments to the quintuplets' Armani outfits, no one could predict that in less than 24 hours, the Bennett name would forever be associated not with the power and influence the senator had built over decades, but with the greatest public scandal Chicago's elite had ever witnessed. The morning of the wedding dawned with perfect crystalline skies, as if Chicago itself had conspired to create an idealized backdrop for what society columns were already calling the Union of the Decade. The Chicago Botanic Garden had been transformed into a fantasy landscape of imported white roses, crystal installations, and silk pavilions. Security personnel in discreet earpieces patrolled the perimeter, checking invitations against a strictly maintained guest list. Kate stood at the window of the Peninsula Suite, watching her 5 children prepare for the day that would forever change the narrative of their lives. In the reflection, she could see Madison meticulously adjusting her glasses, Olivia's athletic frame perfectly complemented by the tailored lines of her Armani pantsuit, Emma rehearsing potential conversation points under her breath, and the twins, Tyler and Jackson, performing identical Windsor knots on each other's ties with mathematical precision. "Are you certain about this?" Kate asked one final time, turning to face them. "Once we cross this threshold, there's no going back." Madison stepped forward, her posture mirroring the confident stance Kate adopted in boardrooms. "We've calculated every variable. The probability of a satisfactory outcome exceeds 87%. "This isn't about statistics, Madison," Kate said gently. "This is about emotional impact." "We understand the emotional variables as well," Emma interjected. "We've prepared for multiple reaction scenarios." Kate studied these 5 extraordinary beings, her greatest creations, more valuable than any algorithm or company valuation. At 15, they stood on the cusp of adulthood, their Bennett features impossible to deny: the penetrating blue eyes, the distinctive jawline, the confident bearing that seemed encoded in their DNA. "Very well," she conceded. "But we follow the plan exactly. We observe only. No confrontations." The quintuplets exchanged glances, a silent communication system perfected over 15 years. Kate pretended not to notice the subtle nod between Madison and Tyler. The Quintessence motorcade departed the peninsula precisely at 11:30, timing calculated to arrive at the Botanic Garden during the pre-ceremony reception when guests would be mingling but before the procession began. Kate had initially intended to utilize Caroline's Vanity Fair invitation, but Tyler had rendered such subterfuge unnecessary by generating 5 flawless digital invitations that would scan properly at security. "Technically not illegal," he had explained when Kate raised an eyebrow. "Just an algorithm-assisted invitation redistribution." As their vehicles approached the garden's entrance, Kate felt a curious detachment, as if watching herself in a film. 15 years ago, she had been thrown out into the rain on Michigan Avenue, her modest possessions scattered on the sidewalk, her heart shattered beyond recognition. Now she was returning in a convoy of luxury vehicles, wearing a hand-tailored Armani dress, CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation, with 5 extraordinary children who carried the Bennett genetic legacy more impressively than Richard himself ever could. "Invitations, please," requested the security guard at the garden entrance, his eyes widening slightly as he recognized Kate from recent business magazine covers. Madison stepped forward, presenting her phone with the QR code. "Wilson Hayes party of 6. The scanner beeped confirmation, and the guard's professional demeanor momentarily slipped. "Enjoy the ceremony, Ms. Wilson Hayes. The garden pathway to your right leads to the reception area." They followed a winding path through meticulously landscaped gardens where elegant guests in formal attire clustered in conversational groups, champagne flutes glinting in the midday sun. Kate recognized senators, corporate leaders, and celebrities, the echelon of society that Richard had once declared beyond her reach. "A Boston scholarship girl like you will never truly belong in these circles," he had sneered during one of their early arguments. The memory, once painful, now seemed almost comically misjudged. Their arrival created an immediate ripple effect. Heads turned, conversations paused, and whispers spread like wind through summer leaves. Kate Wilson Hayes was instantly recognizable to this crowd. Her rise to technological prominence and tomorrow's Callahan Award had been extensively covered in the financial press. "Isn't that the Quintessence CEO?" murmured a woman in Chanel. "What's she doing at Richard Bennett's wedding?" responded her companion. But it wasn't just Kate drawing attention. The quintuplets, moving with the synchronized grace they'd developed since infancy, commanded their own share of curious glances. Their striking resemblance to each other was noteworthy enough, but to the Chicago elite who had known the Bennett family for generations, a more disturbing similarity was immediately apparent. "Those teenagers look exactly like Richard did at that age," an elderly board member of Bennett Industries whispered too loudly to his wife. "The eyes are unmistakable." Kate guided her children toward an unoccupied section of the garden, positioning themselves with clear sightlines to the ceremony area while maintaining a respectful distance. Their strategy was simple: be visible but not intrusive, present but not confrontational. "He's there," Madison said quietly, nodding toward a white pavilion where the groom and groomsmen were gathering. Kate followed her daughter's gaze and felt a curious emptiness where she had expected emotion to surge. Richard Bennett stood in a circle of similarly attired men, his tuxedo impeccably tailored, his posture conveying the entitled confidence of old money. But 15 years had marked him. His once lean frame had thickened slightly at the waist, lines bracketed his mouth, and even from this distance Kate could see the artificial quality of his smile. "His cortisol levels appear elevated," observed Madison clinically. "Classic physiological indicators of stress." "The father of the bride is a significant Democratic donor," Emma added. "This marriage represents both financial consolidation and political alliance." Kate marveled at their detachment. These children who should, by conventional standards, feel abandoned or rejected, instead analyzed their biological father with the cool assessment of scientists studying a moderately interesting specimen. "The ceremony is about to begin," Tyler noted, checking his watch. "Based on standard processional timing, we have approximately 12 minutes before optimal positioning is required." Guests began moving toward rows of white chairs arranged before an elaborate floral arch. The quintuplets followed Kate to seats near the back, where they would be visible from the altar but not disruptively so. A string quartet began playing Pachelbel's canon, signaling the imminent start of the ceremony. Senator Bennett, now retired but still commanding deference, walked unsteadily to his seat in the front row, leaning heavily on his cane. His head turned slightly, scanning the assembled guests with narrowed eyes until his gaze found Kate and the quintuplets. His expression hardened, and he leaned to whisper urgently to an aide. "The senator has identified us," Jackson murmured. "He appears distressed." "He hasn't warned Richard yet," Tyler observed. "Interesting strategic choice." The music changed, signaling the processional's beginning. Bridesmaids in pale blue drifted down the aisle, followed by flower girls scattering rose petals. Richard took his position at the altar beside the officiant, his expression composed into appropriate solemnity. The bridal march began, and Vanessa Miller appeared at the garden's entrance on her father's arm, resplendent in a couture gown that had undoubtedly cost more than Kate's entire Bronx apartment. The guests rose as she processed toward Richard, who managed a convincing smile of adoration. As the bride reached the altar and the ceremony began, Kate felt Madison tense beside her. 3 minutes to optimal revelation," Madison whispered. "Physiological indicators suggest maximum impact during the exchange of vows." Kate glanced sharply at her daughter. "We agreed to observe only." Madison's smile was reminiscent of Eleanor at her most strategically ruthless. "Observation includes being observed, Mother. It's a fundamental principle of quantum mechanics." The officiant's voice carried clearly across the garden. "Richard and Vanessa have prepared their own vows. Richard, you may begin." Richard cleared his throat, producing a folded paper from his pocket. "Vanessa, when we met 3 years ago, I knew immediately that you represented everything I had been searching for in a partner: beauty, intelligence, and the proper background to understand the responsibilities that come with the Bennett name." In the audience, Emma made a small noise of disgust at the transactional undertones. Richard continued, "I promise to uphold the Bennett legacy with you by my side, to provide the security and position you deserve, and to be faithful." His voice faltered as his gaze, drifting across the audience, finally registered Kate's presence. For a moment, his professional mask slipped, revealing naked shock. But it was when his eyes moved to the 5 teenagers beside her that genuine horror transformed his features. The champagne flute he held, part of a unity ritual that would follow the vows, slipped from suddenly nerveless fingers, shattering on the marble platform with a crystalline crash that silenced the string quartet. "Richard?" Vanessa prompted, her smile freezing as she followed his transfixed stare to the 5 teenagers whose Bennett blue eyes gazed back with clinical interest. "Catherine?" Richard's voice was barely a whisper, but in the sudden silence it carried clearly. Senator Bennett lurched to his feet, recognizing the impending disaster. "Continue with the ceremony," he commanded, but the officiant, following Richard's gaze, had also noticed the quintuplets. "Richard, what's happening?" Vanessa hissed, her bridal serenity cracking. Madison chose this moment to rise gracefully from her seat and walk forward, a sealed envelope in her hand. 4 identical siblings flanked her in perfect formation, creating a visual impact that elicited audible gasps from the assembled guests. "Mr. Bennett," Madison said, her voice carrying with the practiced projection of a debate champion, "I believe this information is relevant to today's proceedings." She extended the envelope to the officiant, a kind-faced man who accepted it with visible confusion. "This is outrageous!" Senator Bennett sputtered. "Security! Remove these intruders." "That won't be necessary," Kate said, stepping forward to stand beside her children. "We were properly invited, weren't we, Caroline?" From several rows back, Caroline Winters, editor-in-chief of Vanity Fair, raised her hand with an unapologetic smile. The officiant, having opened the envelope, blanched as he scanned its contents. "As a man of God," he said slowly, "I cannot in good conscience proceed with this ceremony knowing the magnitude of this injustice." "What injustice?" Vanessa demanded, snatching the papers from his hand. Her eyes widened as she comprehended the DNA test results Madison had meticulously prepared. These children are a statistical impossibility according to Richard 15 years ago, Kate said, her voice calm but carrying. 5 children from a single pregnancy without fertility treatments, a 1 in several million occurrence. Almost as improbable as building a multi-billion-dollar company from nothing while raising quintuplets alone. Richard's face had drained of all color, his eyes darting between the 5 teenagers and the incriminating papers now clutched in his fiancée's trembling hands. "This is clearly a fabrication," he finally managed, desperation edging his voice. "Catherine always was ambitious. Ambitious enough to build a company valued at $3.8 billion without a cent of your money," Kate interrupted. "Ambitious enough to raise 5 extraordinary children alone while you lived your privileged life." The garden had erupted into chaos, guests rising from their seats, phones capturing the unfolding drama, security personnel looking uncertainly between Richard and the senator for direction. Vanessa's face contorted with fury as understanding dawned completely. "You have children? Children you abandoned?" When Richard remained speechless, she yanked the 6-carat diamond ring from her finger and hurled it with surprising accuracy into the decorative koi pond. "You disgust me!" As she stormed down the aisle, her father hurrying after her, camera flashes accelerated, capturing the moment for posterity and for tomorrow's headlines. While the guests erupted into scandalized conversations and Richard stood frozen at the altar, the quintuples regarded him with identical expressions of clinical interest, as if he were a particularly disappointing laboratory result. The flashes of the cameras began to increase when the assembled guests recognized the magnitude of the scandal they were witnessing. The camera flashes illuminated Richard's ashen face as the reality of the situation sank in. The meticulously planned wedding that was supposed to solidify his position within Chicago's elite had imploded spectacularly. Guests whispered furiously, phones captured every moment of his humiliation, and his bride had vanished, leaving only the ripples in the koi pond where her diamond ring now rested. "Someone call security," Senator Bennett demanded, his voice quavering with rage and panic. "This woman is disrupting a private event." "Actually, Senator," Caroline Winters stepped forward, press credentials visible, "Ms. Wilson Hayes and her children are here as my guests. Vanity Fair has every right to cover this significant social event." The quintuplets remained in perfect formation, their Bennett blue eyes fixed on Richard with scientific curiosity rather than emotional investment. Madison still stood closest to the altar, her posture reflecting the confident stance Kate had perfected in countless boardrooms. "Perhaps," Kate suggested calmly, "we should continue this discussion somewhere more private, Richard." Richard seemed to recover some composure at her words. "There's nothing to discuss," he snapped, straightening his tie with trembling fingers. "This is clearly a calculated attempt to extort money from the Bennett family using falsified DNA results." Emma stepped forward, her debate training evident in her measured tone. "The test results are based on DNA samples collected 3 weeks ago during your charity appearance in Seattle. The glass you drank from provided sufficient genetic material for conclusive testing." That's invasion of privacy," Richard sputtered. "An interesting ethical argument," Emma conceded, "perhaps less compelling than the ethics of abandoning 5 children and orchestrating the professional destruction of their mother." By now, most guests had abandoned any pretense of decorum, openly recording the confrontation on their phones. Several journalists who had been covering the society wedding were frantically typing on their devices, recognizing the career-making story unfolding before them. The wedding planner, a severe woman in a headset, approached cautiously. "Mr. Bennett, should we ask the guests to proceed to the reception area while you address this situation?" Richard nodded stiffly, and an announcement was made directing guests to the adjacent garden where champagne and hors d'oeuvres awaited. Few moved, unwilling to miss the unfolding drama. "Catherine," Richard finally addressed her directly, his voice lowered but still audible to nearby guests. "What exactly do you want? Money? Recognition? Because this public spectacle won't help you get either." Kate regarded him with the detached interest one might show an obsolete technology. "I want nothing from you, Richard. I never did. These children," she gestured to the quintuplets, "wanted to see you for themselves, to understand where they came from. That's all." "I find that hard to believe," he scoffed. "The timing seems remarkably calculated to cause maximum damage." "You mean like the timing of having security escort me from my job the day after learning I was pregnant?" Kate replied evenly. "Or canceling my health insurance during a high-risk pregnancy with quintuplets?" Senator Bennett had maneuvered himself between Richard and the growing crowd of onlookers. "This discussion is over. Richard, come with me. Our legal team will handle this situation." As Richard turned to follow his father, Tyler spoke for the first time, his analytical tone so similar to Richard's in business settings that several guests gasped at the resemblance. "Bennett Industries stock is already responding to this development," he noted, holding up his tablet. "Down 7% in after-hours trading as news spreads. Interesting correlation between ethical failures and market perception." Richard froze, then turned back slowly. "You're monitoring our stock?" "Among other metrics," Tyler confirmed. "Your company's technological infrastructure investments have been suboptimal for at least 7 fiscal quarters. Your market position in AI development ranks 17th among comparable corporations. Your debt-to-equity ratio suggests significant vulnerability to market fluctuations." The clinical assessment, delivered in such a familiar analytical cadence by a 15-year-old version of himself, seemed to affect Richard more deeply than any emotional appeal could have. "Who are you people?" he whispered. Jackson, the most empathetic of the quintuplets, answered with simple truth. "We're your children. We just wanted to see you once, to understand." The rawness of the statement hung in the air, cutting through the spectacle and scandal to the human reality at its core. For a moment, something like genuine emotion flickered across Richard's face. Perhaps the first recognition that these weren't abstract concepts or financial liabilities, but actual human beings carrying his genetic legacy. "This isn't the place," he said finally, his voice uncharacteristically uncertain. "There's a private room in the garden pavilion. We can talk there." Kate exchanged glances with the quintuplets, their silent communication system working efficiently. Madison gave a slight nod. 10 minutes, Kate agreed. "Then we'll leave you to explain to your guests why there won't be a wedding today." In the elegantly appointed private room, with security ensuring no journalists could follow, Richard paced while Senator Bennett sat heavily in a chair, his face mottled with barely contained fury. "You've orchestrated this perfectly, haven't you?" the senator accused. "Destroying years of careful alliance building with the Miller family just when Bennett Industries needs their political connections most." "I didn't orchestrate anything," Kate replied. "Your son's actions 15 years ago led us to this moment. I simply allowed my children to meet their biological father once before we returned to our lives." Richard stopped pacing, studying each quintuplet with growing disbelief. "They really are mine, aren't they?" "Genetically, yes," Kate confirmed. "In every other way that matters, they're their own people." "What do you want?" Richard asked again, more subdued now. "Joint custody? Financial support? Bennett Industries shares?" Madison answered before Kate could. "We require nothing from you, Mr. Bennett. Our mother has provided everything we need. This meeting was simply to satisfy scientific curiosity about genetic inheritance patterns. Scientific curiosity, Richard repeated incredulously. You crashed my wedding for scientific curiosity? Technically, we didn't crash, Emma corrected. We had valid invitations and entered peacefully. The disruption occurred when you recognized us, a natural consequence of genetic resemblance. They're like little robots, Senator Bennett muttered, talking like adults. It's unnatural. Olivia fixed him with a glare so reminiscent of his own that the senator actually flinched. We're not robots. We're humans who've been raised to think clearly and speak honestly, apparently unfamiliar concepts in the Bennett family. Enough, Kate intervened. We've accomplished what we came for. It's time to go. Wait, Richard said, an edge of desperation in his voice. You can't just appear after 15 years, turn my life upside down, and then vanish again. That's an interesting perspective coming from you, Kate observed coolly, considering that's exactly what you did to me. I was wrong, Richard blurted, the admission seeming to surprise even himself. What I did, what I said to you that night, it was unforgivable. Yes, it was, Kate agreed without rancor. But forgiveness was never the point of this encounter. 3 days after the wedding debacle, headlines across the country blared variations of Bennett heir abandons quintuplets, single mother builds billion-dollar empire. Financial news outlets focused on the immediate market repercussions. Bennett Industries' stock had plummeted 17%, while Quintessence Technologies had surged 12% on news of a potential Asian expansion. Kate and the Quintuplets had retreated to their peninsula suite, declining further interviews as the story exploded across traditional and social media platforms. The Millers had publicly severed all ties with the Bennetts, withdrawing crucial political support for several pending regulatory approvals Bennett Industries desperately needed. On the third morning, as Kate reviewed breakfast options with room service, her security detail alerted her to Richard's presence in the lobby. He's alone, Ms. Wilson-Hayes. No lawyers, no press. He's requesting 5 minutes of your time. Kate glanced at the quintuplets, each engaged in their own activities around the suite. Madison analyzing stock fluctuations, Olivia doing push-ups, Emma drafting an essay, Tyler coding on his laptop, and Jackson composing music on his tablet. It's your decision, she told them. He's asking to see you. The quintuplets exchanged their customary silent communication before Madison spoke for the group. We'll meet him in the hotel restaurant. Public space, controlled environment. Downstairs, Richard waited alone at a corner table, his usual confident posture replaced by the slumped shoulders of a defeated man. When he saw the quintuplets approaching with Kate, he stood awkwardly, uncertainty evident in every movement. Thank you for agreeing to see me, he began, his rehearsed speech immediately forgotten as he took in the 5 extraordinary teenagers up close. My God, you're all so… Bennett genetics express strongly in facial structure and eye color, Madison supplied clinically, though our intellectual development has been shaped primarily by environmental factors. Richard gestured helplessly. May I know your names at least? Kate introduced each quintuplet, watching as Richard tried desperately to form connections, complimenting Madison's academic achievements, Olivia's athletic records, Emma's debate championships, and the twins' technological and musical accomplishments. Princeton at 15 is extraordinary, Madison, he said with forced enthusiasm. Bennett Industries has an internship program that… Thank you, but I've already secured a research position at MIT for next summer, Madison replied politely. Each attempt at connection met with similar polite but distant responses. The quintuplets answered his questions with perfect courtesy, but showed none of the emotional engagement Richard clearly hoped for. You don't understand, he finally said, desperation breaking through his composed facade. I made the worst mistake of my life. I can make it up to you. I have resources, connections. Tyler interrupted with the same analytical precision that had made him a programming prodigy. Statistically speaking, Mr. Bennett, The window for those offers was approximately 15 years ago. At this point, your marginal utility in our lives approaches zero." Richard flinched as if physically struck. "You're my children," he protested weakly. "Biologically," Jackson acknowledged, his artistic sensitivity making him the most empathetic toward Richard's distress. "But family is built on presence, not genetics." As the brief meeting concluded, Richard made one final desperate appeal to Kate as the quintuplets gathered their belongings. "Please, Catherine, can I be part of their lives now? I'll do anything." Kate regarded him thoughtfully, seeing not the powerful man who had once terrified her, but merely a mediocre executive whose family business was losing relevance while she had built something truly revolutionary. "Not out of vengeance, Richard, but simple reality. We don't need you," she said gently. "I built a life, a family, and an empire without your help. Your children have values, education, and opportunities you could never provide, even with all your old money." The following morning, as the Wilson Hayes family boarded their private jet back to Seattle, Richard sat alone in his office, staring at the computer screen showing Quintessence Technologies' market value, more than twice that of Bennett Industries. On his desk lay a stack of magazines featuring the quintuplets' accomplishments, divorce papers from Vanessa, and a summons from the Senate Ethics Committee investigating potential financial fraud related to his concealed paternity. Kate, relaxing in the luxurious cabin while watching her 5 extraordinary children animatedly discussing their future projects, finally felt a sense of closure. It wasn't about revenge or retribution, it was about truth and liberation. "Mom, do you regret it?" Emma asked, ever the philosopher of the group. Kate smiled, looking at the 5 teenagers who were her greatest pride and accomplishment. "Not for a second, sweetheart. Some people enter our lives to stay, others merely to teach us how strong we can be when necessary." If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen.